This is me, the Undead Viking, and I'm going to talk to you about this game. It's called The Sands of Shurax, the newest game in the HEXplore series. There's two games for this one in the HEXplore series. It was the Valley of the Dead King and the Forests of Adramon. Both of those games I've done reviews for. They were excellent, and this game is no different. So if you've played those games before and you are wondering about getting this one, just go ahead and back it because it's amazing. That being said, one of the things that always drew me to HEXplore was the fact that when they, I played thousands of games at this point, and I don't say that to brag, it's just kind of one of those things, being a video reviewer and having done this now for a decade, it's one of those things where I've just played a lot, and I usually can find something in almost any game that I like. You know, it has to be a real stinker for me not to like it, but finding a game that actually like really engages me in some aspect, as far as like, oh hey, here's this new little mechanism, or hey, here's this new cool theme, or something like that, that kind of scratches like an itch I didn't have, or maybe I did have, you know, that I haven't been able to find, you know, is something unique for me. And HEXplore was one of those games. It was something where I could kind of tell this was like a passion project for the designer. It was something where, you know, they had decided, you know what, there is no real true sandbox RPG game out there. Where the players just kind of get to do whatever they want to do. Just classic D&D, old school D&D, where you know, the players, you know, come across, you know, I could probably go on a long way. I'm going to try to be succinct here, but like classic old school D&D was just basically like, hey, the players enter into wherever this village that's having problems with the orcs, or where these ruins are next to this city or whatever, and they would make a mess of things until they were no longer wanted and they just move on to someplace else. And so HEXplore was a kind of, in a weird way, that kind of atmosphere. It was like each time you played, it was a different story. Each time you played, it was just something where like you got propelled in different directions. You had no idea exactly what was going to happen. The map wasn't made in just this cute little, hey, this map's going to be this square and it's going to be right here and this is where you're going to be. The map could just be all over the place and going in different directions, and it just looked like nothing that you've had before. And they really made that happen in Valley of the Dead King. They doubled down with it with the Forests of Adramon, and now with the Sands of Shurax, they've really dove in, because they have this wonderful mechanism where there's these wastelands that can only be traveled if the party like basically takes a caravan into the wastelands, and then they get to muck around in there, make a nuisance of themselves, and hopefully not die, and then take a caravan, find a caravan, another one, and take that caravan back out to a semblance of safety, and then they can spend their money, and they can level up, they can fight in gladiator pits, they can go to gambling dens, things like that, until they've done what they want to do with their money and their treasure, and then they take another caravan back into those wastes, and they do it again. All the while, where this giant, basically, dune worm, the Ravager, it keeps popping up and down, leaving mutation crystals in its wake, and just like all kinds of crazy, over-the-top fantasy things going on. There's so many things. I mean, this is the rule book, and I'll talk about that in the game when I show you the game. There's so many things going on in this thing. I don't think I could ever really go through all of them and have a video that everybody would watch, but I am going to give you a really good overview of how the game is played and what you can expect to see, and then we're going to come back here, and I'm going to, once again, just tell you how awesome the game is, and hopefully at some point you'll decide to go ahead and back it and get your own copy. But alright, here we go. HEXplore, the Sands of Shurax. Well, as I said, the Sands of Shurax version of HEXplore takes the tried and true mechanisms that were in the two previous games and have added a few wrinkles and changed up the way the game is played slightly. But there's a lot of the same mechanisms going on. Now, this is a very, like, I don't want to say rules-intensive game, but this is a bit of a throwback of a design. This is kind of the bread and butter of the types of games I used to play when I was younger. and that's neither good nor bad. It's just what it is. As we've kind of moved into this modern board game experience, there seems to be a lot of emphasis on like less rules and quick to the fun type of thing. But for grognards like myself and people that are looking for kind of an old school experience, there is lots of games like this, and especially games like HEXplore that really embrace kind of that minutia, that old school rule system. Now, this is nowhere near as complex as some of the old school like war games or like Magic Realm or anything like I used to play when I was younger, but it definitely is a step or two, a notch or two above what you might be expecting as far as rules if you don't know what you're getting into. The rule book, I mean, like, is this fairly thick rule book that I got, and I'm sure that this, you know, might not be exactly the same thing that is published with the game, but like I said, it definitely does take a little bit of investment and a little bit of, like, definitely read the rules before you dive into your first session. Or there are several videos of people that are going through like an entire play session and showing you how the game works, and you know, and that can be a good thing to take a gander at before you dive into your first play session of this. So before I just kind of give you an overview of how this game works and kind of the theme and some of the things you'll be doing, just keep in mind this is a prototype that I was sent. You know, so I'm sure that the final won't be like, you know, the thin cardboard that I have here. The miniatures I have are not the miniatures that you can expect to see in the final produced version. So just keep that in mind, and I invite you to go ahead and check out the Kickstarter page so you can see a glimpse of what that will look like. Alright, so what you're seeing here is kind of how the game will get set up the first time you play. The game and all the versions of HEXplore have a very modular game board. The only two parts of the game board that, you know, kind of have to be in place are this border here, not these little quadrant spaces over here, not those two quadrant spaces over here, and this upper portion of that game board there. What you'll be doing is you'll be creating the world as you play, and as I said before, this truly is a sandbox game. And I know this is the Sands of Shurax, but the preceding two games were sandbox games as well, so that isn't like a tongue-in-cheek kind of ha-ha-ha, but it does work pretty well as a joke there. So the way the game works is that each game has, it's a cooperative game, as I said, and you will have a certain kind of mission. The missions are largely dependent upon what the players want to do. They could be that they have to track down the Ravager, which is like this big creature. Now, that this isn't the same miniature, but in my version, this was the Ravager. Some things will be you have to destroy the Ravager. Think of the Ravager as like a giant, like, cyclopean depths type of sandworm, if you will, just immense to the ages, and defeating it seems like an impossibility. Sometimes it'll be you are trying to coax the Ravager to the city-states and to destroy them and leaving one left, you know, and then you become kind of like the king of that city-state. It might just be you trying to survive the wastelands and trying to earn enough money, and you're just that. So, I mean, it definitely depends on what the players want to do and what goal they want to shoot for. That's something I really like, too, about it. It doesn't always just have to be, we need to go and kill the sandworm. It can be, you know, whatever you want it to be. Kind of like a real role-playing game. So before the game begins, each player will be tasked to make a character. You won't roll up a character, so to speak, but what you will do is you'll have one of these player boards, like a Templar, Gladiator, Gambler, so forth. And you have one of these characters, and then you're going to combine that character with a race, whether, you know, Volcanist, Duneborn, Hobgoblin, Half-Orc, so on and so forth. So you'll take one of these, and each race will have adjustments to stats that your characters start with depending upon what they have, and also what their food rating is and so forth. And also it tells you like what their preferred enemy is, that they, like, if they fight things of a magical nature, they'll do extra damage. Like the let's see here, the Feroran is, you know, hate the undead, or hobgoblins don't like monstrous humanoids. So if you took like a hobgoblin, so to speak, and then you said I want to make a hobgoblin gladiator, you would, you know, take this character board, you would take this race, and then you would adjust all of the stats that are on the character by like the bonuses that you have. And then you write down the food rating is 3. That basically means that's the food that you have to consume 3 food when you're told to consume food. And as like survival in this game is very, very accelerated. In the other games, you had food, and if you ran out of food, you'd start to starve. But here, when you're traveling around the wastes, if you don't have food, like you don't spend a food, you get heat exhaustion and you start to die. So I mean, like just think of that as this giant desert. So I haven't like filled it out or anything like that. But what you will do is, you know, you just take like a dry erase marker. If I can get this dry erase marker open. So you would take, you know, like say, like here's my gladiator. Give him a name. Let's give him a Shurax. It will be his name. He's a bad, you know, he's a hobgoblin. You name him Shurax. His favorite opponent is monstrous humanoid. Probably should have wrote this up before I started this video, but who cares? So the monstrous humanoid, and then I would go ahead and I'd adjust the things that he has. So like I'd add +2 attack, +1 defend, and so on and so forth to my character sheet. And you just fill those out, and then this is also how you will keep track of your damage and everything else that you do. And you know, and like if you have anything in your backpack, you fill in your backpack there, and so on and so forth. Now, each one of these abilities, like Gladius, your shield, perfected technique, and adrenaline, all of these are like your abilities that you'll use in combat. And I'll talk more about that stuff when I get to the combat section. But these will be adjusted, you know, like in the starting like scores, like here, as you can see, like you have starting scores, and then you'll adjust those again by what's on those sheets. So kind of like a fun way to start it, like you actually like create a character, and it's kind of fun to create a character because of the fact that like you get to like personalize them in some way, and then you're going to watch that character level as you play the game. Oh, I forgot one other thing. I apologize. So like these two things down here, the perfected technique and adrenaline, both of those are like special abilities that are described over here. That's always something I like when there's like any special abilities or special powers your characters have. Put them right on the character sheet so they're right there. You can see them. You don't have to worry about it. And then you have, like, it might be tough to see, but you can see like there's that little fist there, and like it has a little 1. That tells you like how much energy it costs to perform that particular ability. So, and your vitals over here are like your health and your energy, and you'll lose, you lose energy as you do your abilities, and health you lose when you take damage. Down here is like the most important thing. Like here you have your 3 separate skills that you're going to be rolling on every single turn. Navigate, explore, and survival. And like once again, you'll have 1, 1, and 3. And you can see like navigate, I don't get any bonus on that as a hobgoblin, but I get +1 explore and +2 survival. So after all was said and done, you would like write a 1, and then that would be a 2, and then I get +2 survival, so I actually have a 5 on survival, which is pretty good. But those can be leveled up as the game progresses, and so you'll get like abilities and upgrades that will increase those. All right, so that's enough about the characters. We're just going to kind of move on from that. I'm going to show you on what exactly happens on a turn. So when you take your turn, like the players will decide, it's a cooperative game, and I should say this game is, I don't usually play a lot of solo games, but I have played the HEXplore games solo just because they kind of well, I'll talk more about some of the reasons I play it solo in my final thoughts, but this is one of those things where it's just like kind of a nice challenge each time I play, and so I enjoy it a great deal for that. But on your turn, what you're going to be doing is you're going to be moving your party, and your party all moves together. You're going to be moving your party around the board. When you move, there's certain things that are going to affect movement depending upon if you have like certain equipment, or if you're walking through the silt, which is like that light, the light yellow or light kind of tan spots that are on there. And when you end up in one of those spots, when you're out of border, you will automatically draw another one of these. Are called hot tiles. The other 2 games had tiles like this, which are larger, and these are come into play when you place them when you reach a border on one of the quadrants that's on the floor. But I won't talk about those because that's kind of what the preceding 2 versions of the game are. This is these hot tiles. tiles, which are right here. And you just take one off the top like so, and then you get to place that onto the board where you just reach the border. And so in this case, you can see there's, and you can place this in any direction you want. You don't have to make sure it's all face up. Here, there's a couple cool things. There's an oasis. Oases are always good, obviously, when you find those in the desert. But this spot right here is a caravan. The caravans are very important. So you might end up like purposely kind of like trying to twist it so you're close to that caravan when you do that. Now, but when every time you move, you have to roll, each player has to roll dice, compare those rolls to their stats. And you can see these are all color-coded, like so, and then you have these 3 dice. Now, these dice have, they have a 10 spot, which, which is bad because 10's high, but they have these locations, these hex locations here, and those are considered to be like the 1, and they're also considered to be a critical success. And so, like, if you critically succeed in things like your Explorer, you'll find gold when you find some ruins and you find a bag of gold or something like that. There's not really a ruin spot on the board, but that will happen. If you succeed on when you're moving and you succeed on your survival, you will actually collect enough food that you won't have to actually, like, you forage up some berries, maybe you kill a snake, whatever. You get enough food to survive on that particular turn. You don't have to spend your food. Now, the one food that you have to consume despite to stave off heat exhaustion still happens in the desert, but you don't have to, eat food compared to your food rating to stay alive. And the navigate one is really, really important because at least half of your party have to succeed in their navigate rolls, or else you will wander. And if you end up wandering, what will happen is that you'll take this die, you'll take a 6-sided die, and you'll notice there's this little thing here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you will wander in one direction wherever that sends you. So if we wandered, we'd like actually move like over there to that caravan spot. But that's not always good. Like, you can sometimes wander into a spot where there's a boss fight or things that are bad too. So it's one of those things where you have to watch out for. So, like, basically, let me just see what I roll here for my. So I would have failed on everything. I rolled a 9 on my navigate, and then which is, I'm sorry, a 9 on my survival, which is actually like my best score, where I needed a 5 or less, and I have a 1 and 2 in the other 2 things, so I had almost no chance of getting those, well, no chance, 10% and 20%, but I failed. So in these situations, I would have to eat my food, I wouldn't find any special gold or anything like that, and I wouldn't I wouldn't help my party prevent being lost. Now, if I'm playing like a 2-player game and the other player succeeded in the navigate roll, at least half of us would have succeeded that, and we would not be affected by that. Just so you know, if you roll critical successes on navigate, you save the group. You can save the entire group from wandering. So let's say you have like 6 of you are playing, and 1 of you actually gets a critical success. So they roll the hex for that. That means that you prevent the group from wandering, or you can wander an additional hex, in a direction that you choose. So you can actually get to go a little extra movement. If you get a critical result on your, oh, I'm sorry, that would be navigate. I apologize. That's survival. And then this, I'm getting ahead of my. Oh, I got the explanation right, just using the wrong color. So green is navigate, and that's what I just said. That if you got that, you would get to prevent your people from getting lost. If you have a bonus to your Explorer and you get a hex on the Explorer, you gain 3 gold instead of 2, or you can heal all the heroes 1 health, or if you choose the survival, if you can either gain 1 food, so like not only do you have enough food that you actually like prevent like having to spend food to feed yourself, but you also actually gain a food, or all the heroes can heal 1 energy because you succeeded. Now, if you got 2 out of 3 critical successes, all heroes like negate their conditions. So like if they have something like a poison or something, they can negate those. Or if you somehow manage to get 3 critical successes, you can draw a power card and give its bonus to each hero. So probably not going to happen too often, but if those things do happen, that is possible. All right, so that's something you'll be doing every turn. But the other big thing is that now you're going to have to, after you're done and you've moved to your spots that you're going to be, you're going to have to see what happens to you, what circumstance you come across. Now, circumstances are like the encounter or what you've discovered along the way. Now, up here we have the deck of circumstances, and we have 4 of them that are out that people can see right now. These will sometimes be encounters, they'll be events, they could be treasure, but what you do is that you're going to roll 1 die, and you have 1, 2, 3, and 4. It's upside down, but you know, if you're sitting over here, right side up. And if you roll a 5 or a 6, you have to draw a blind off the top. So let's just see, I'm going to roll, and I'm going to roll 3. So what we do is we draw the 3rd one, and we're going to encounter that as our circumstance. So here you have, and this is actually an event where it says you've encountered a merchant who is in need of help. It seems he has been stranded in the desert living off his own merchandise. He asks you to help him get back to any of the city-states. He sells all items available in the bazaar worth 6 gold or less, and will pay each hero 6 gold upon arrival. The goods trafficker reduces the group's movement speed by 1 hex to a minimum of 1. And when you arrive at a city state, move your reputation up to 2 points in any direction. Pretty straightforward. It just tells you exactly what you have to do, and you're going to have to protect him along the way. And so this would now become a mission that you have. Now, a couple important things like you can buy things at the bazaar. I might as well just show, since we mentioned the bazaar, I might as well just show you the sheet for the bazaar. So here is a sheet for the bazaar, and there's a lot of stuff to look through here, but these are all the things you can buy. Lots of different items, that you can, hardy rations, dangerous and tonic, so on and so forth, spell components, and then we get into King's elixirs and survival kits, caravan journeys, and so on and so forth. The most important thing, in my opinion, is like the caravan journey, because one of the things about the game is that you cannot hook up the wastes. You can't hook this place up with any of the quadrants. It is the only way to get into the wastes and get out of the wastes is to take a caravan. So you either have to go into a caravan spot like that right there, and then I'll talk about caravans here in just a little bit, or you have to purchase a caravan spot by being in one of the city-states. Then you can go back into the wastes. Now you're saying, why do I want to go back to the wastes? Well, the wastes are where you're going to be doing all your adventuring. Plus, it's where you're going to be trying to find the Ravager, and the Ravager has a lot to do with how you're going to beat the game. Now, a couple other things that particular card mentioned as far as the goods trafficker and what you can do, you'll notice that it mentioned that you could change your reputation, and you'll notice there's this little 4 box square over here, and there's factions in this game, and what you will do as you play the game, you will start becoming most likely you'll start moving towards one alignment, or not. You'll be rebellious, or you'll be honorable, or so on and so forth. There's a lot of different possibilities. And factions, I won't go into full detail about everything, but different places, here's a mission that would actually move your this is the faction that it's associated with, and it's associated with the city-state of Aurora. And if you are being certain factions will give you certain bonuses depending upon the city-states you visit. You'll get a reduction in the cost of your goods and things like that. So playing, your faction will naturally change as you play the game, but paying attention to your faction and paying attention to your alignment, so to speak, as how it affects the actions you want to take is a very important aspect of the game, and something to keep track of, and something to recognize as well. All right, so that's a circumstance. I'm just going to show you a couple of other circumstances just so you can kind of see them, and just and obviously once you open up a spot, you're going to take the card off the top and you're going to fill it out. So here is a discovery circumstance where it says a strange cult has recently appeared in each of the city-states, and the members claim that the end of the times has begun. And so on and so forth, often misguided. Strangely, today you swear you found this fabled soaring city. It floats impossibly high up, but you lose it later in the day behind towering pillar-like clouds. Keep this card until the end of the game. You roll a single die, discard this card after you have re-rolled 6 times. So it just kind of gives you a special little ability. And then I'm going to actually take this Desert Harpies card out just so you can kind of see it. This is like a monstrous humanoid, and it is like an enemy that you possibly fight. It's an encounter. And I'm going to leave that out because I'm going to use that when I show you how combat works here in just a little bit. But I want to touch on a couple other things before I go into that. So let's talk about caravans, because caravans are a really important part of the game. Then I'm going to talk about the Ravager, and then I'm going to talk about combat. All right, so caravans. When you join a caravan, you're gonna turn one of these cards over, and you're gonna have a caravan master. So here you have, and like even notice they've got a faction up there. And it gives you kind of a little background. You know, it's like what the if you want to purchase items from them, it gives you a bonus to the cost. If you're trying to protect them, make sure they live. You know, it gives you an energy. You know, that gives you the health cost, so you're trying to protect them. And this eccentric gnome has 4 arms and is a tinkerer by trade. He has built a massive functioning silt skimmer, rumored to be as large as a dragon. This unique contraption slowly moves across the sands, but sails as swift as it howls through the silt. The Dune Runner is interested in gathering Ravager crystals. One thing is certain, Ishak has a secretive plan for their use. Especially if you draw a remnant caravan event, the Dune Runners take over and suffer no damage from it. Heroes may only attempt to assist in a remnant event if the group pays Ishak and his caravan 6 gold. And that's that's a certain type of event that you could encounter if you're with this caravan. It's just something that could be effective. And once again, you get a bunch of these, and each of them has like a cool little backstory and stuff, and you're never always going to get the same ones twice when you run through caravans. And like I said, they're a really important part of the game. And like as I said, they take you into the wastes and out of the wastes back and forth. Now, one of the first things you'll do after you have your caravan master is you're going to roll a d4, and that's going to determine what their city-state destination is. And so it is a 1, and city-state 1 is Ferrora, which is over here, and so you're going to place that on there so you know where it's heading. And so this would be if we were on this spot where the caravan. I should have mentioned that. But so now you have the choice of whether or not you want to join with this particular caravan, because that's their destination. If you decide that's where you're going to go, then you're going to draw caravan events depending upon the number of players. In this case, because we have 2 to 3 heroes, we're going to have 3 caravan events. And so we turn these over. And these are the events that we have to deal with if we're going to be traveling with this caravan. And we don't have to deal with these, but sometimes, like if the caravan master and things take damage, we won't get the rewards that they are willing to give us. You know, so there's a lot of times when it's like it's in our best interest to save them. So like here, you just have like. It tells you the skills that are associated with this endless dunes, which are going to be your green and like your survival and your navigate. And it says the caravan is moving across dangerous terrain. Dunes stretch as far as the eye can see. Your feet sink with each step, scalding your ankles. When will you get through this place? Any health or damage dealt by the event is non-lethal. So you're gonna test your skills to try to defeat this, and then like you notice there's energy drain that's associated with it as well. But having successes, if you succeed, you're gonna lower the effect by -2. A critical success is -4, and if you fail, you add 2 to it. And so you just do these for each of those particular like experiences. And like I said, you don't have to do them. But like when you don't do them, that means that the caravan takes damage. And if you want to know, like if you are able to, bring them back, the rewards can be really good. So like if they're alive, you're going to get some gold if they're alive. And then notice if they have full vitals and full health, notice how you get permanent bonuses to your skills, your navigation skills. So it's definitely in your best interest to try to travel with the caravan and succeed in getting them back. But sometimes you just won't be able to because of the situation that you're in. All right, so let's talk about the Ravager. So the Ravager, you're going to check and see when and if the Ravager shows up at the in every turn that you are going to be playing. This is considered to be the villain phase when you roll, and you're going to roll a 4-sided die. And as long as you don't roll a 1, he won't show up. Let's just see if he does. I didn't roll a 1. But if I had rolled a 1, the Ravager will show up. The very first time the Ravager shows up, they show up in the first tile, the hot tile that was placed on the board. And then you're going to roll, and you probably can't see it, but there's a 1, 2, 3, and hex that's on there. And so you're going to roll and see what you get. So this would be a 3, and so I'm going to place the Ravager would show up right there. Now, the Ravager, in this case, like later on, the Ravager will stay put, and this is considered to be Act 1 of the Ravager. And then there's like an Act 2 of the Ravager, and then when the Ravager shows up, he can show up anywhere. He doesn't have to show up in the wastes only. And then you can also and then what happens is that during Act 1, the Ravager appears. He kind of just stays where he is, and then he goes back down into the sand. And then in Act 2, the Ravager appears, and then he disappears. And then in Act 3, he shows up and he stays. He will actively start moving about and try to affect the players. But that's actually shows like the progression of the game as well, because since a lot of the end game results have a lot to do with the Ravager, you will have situations where you're leveling up your character, getting them more and more powerful, and then, you know, when you finally are in the spot where, like, you can probably take on the Ravager, you will be in Act, like, 2 or 3 at that point, and then having the Ravager stay on the board is fine. One of the interesting things is that when the Ravager disappears, they leave behind these mutation crystals, and this kind of segues into mutations here a little bit, but mutation crystals, and you place those in the spot where they went down. And those mutation crystals are like these basically energy crystals. They destroy anything that possibly could have been in that spot, and they take the place of it. But also, you can mine those crystals for Ravager crystals, which have a lot of different powers and abilities and what have you. But also, they can mutate your characters. And also, mutations can happen to like the enemies you fight as well. And just there's a mutations deck there, and if you do happen to get mutated, like you'll have your body produces strong pheromones that attract others to you. You gain bribery proficiency. Each additional luring pheromones mutation in play reduces the bribe requirement by 1. Some enemies you can bribe so they don't fight you and stuff like that. Additionally, the group may treat the reputation as if it were too higher or lower in any direction. So little powers like that. And there's not always like, here, let me just draw another one and show you, so here's monstrous size. You become larger than the average person of your race. You gain +1 food rating. Current and maximum health, you increase your current and maximum health modifiers. Each additional monstrous size mutation you possess increases your food and grants the size matters increase again. So you just get bigger and tougher with different mutations. And mutations can be bad too, so I mean they aren't, and that's not, the greater size isn't necessarily good totally either, because you have to spend more food to stay alive. So it can have both positive and negative effects. But once again, it kind of just adds that whole story of everything that's going on. A couple other things I just wanted to show you, like, you might have noticed there's this little spot right there. That's called a mission location. If you go onto a spot with a mission location, as long as there is an available mission for one of the 4 city-states that matches up with the terrain that mission's on, like you can also see there's like terrain over here for highlands and the mountains and stuff like that, you can draw the mission. Which case, here is the mission for that actually says, like, there, it might be tough to see, but it has the Silt Sea there. And then, like, if you complete this mission, you get 2 power-up cards. And I'll show you some power-up cards here in a second. But it says, the Hanta are opposed to the current leadership of Drya, maintaining that the recent elections were staged by elitists who long to control the city-state. Most are unsure of their nature, of their motives, but it is widely whispered that they have more nefarious goals. For now, they steadily work to undermine the tribunal's authority and have become more ambitious and in some cases even deadly in their pursuit. You've made a name for yourself, and the faction now seeks for you to join them. Travel to the mission location and camp there for 4 game turns, learning how they operate. In addition to the rewards shown above, the group has now joined the Hanta and gains the Hanta faction emblem. So, like, and you don't, if you do it, obviously there's rewards, but you don't have to do the missions either. If you don't like the missions that are presented to you, you definitely can just avoid those, if you will, and you don't have to take advantage. Now, power-up cards, I'm just going to, like, show you a couple here. Power-up cards are just probably what you've already seen. So it's like they increase, like here, like they here's one that'll increase your explore skill by 2. Here's one that increases your survival skill by a couple. And these are almost always useful. Here's one that gives you another favorite opponent. Here's like a second mastery. You know, so like they vary in scope and power, but they are always something good. And anytime you can get a power-up card, it is strongly suggested that you do so. All right, so now let me just show you a couple of things, like as far as like bosses. There are like bosses that will show up in the there are tiles, like these desert or hot tiles as they're called, have things like this that actually have boss locations on them, and you can see there are boss locations also on the board as well, that you can travel to on the quadrants if you want to. Bosses are just like, you know, here, like, you know, they have, you know, here is the enormous pangolin, or Amanzu, the Scorpion King, and so forth. So these are big bad monsters that you can fight, and I'm going to show you how combat works here in a second, but they're so big and have so many different things that they do, and so much hit points and energy and what have you, that they get their own big giant card. And just so you can see, the Ravager is so immense and so impressive that you actually get 2 of these that you put together. Here he goes, the Ravager of Shurax, and you actually, you know, have this giant 2 base board that you have to use to defeat him. So as you know, to defeat the Ravager in combat is truly an epic situation that you should only be undertaken if you are like severely powerful. I mentioned that opponents can be mutated later on. They actually have like opponent mutations, and this is a big giant table that you'll roll on, and I'm not going to go into full detail, but I mean, I kind of showing you this just because of the fact that this game just has so much going on, and it's like each time you play it is going to be so unique and special, in my opinion, that I just want to basically you know, make sure you understand it. All right, so finally, combat. Combat will happen fairly regularly. It won't happen all the time. You might go several rounds without a combat, but you have this battle mat. It is suggested that if you're playing multiple players, one person just you know, takes control of this, and they determine everything together. And what you will do with the battle mat is like, so like I mentioned, like these desert harpies, like we're going to fight the desert harpies. So just each player will determine, like, altogether what they're going to do as far as their attacks are going to be. And you know, each player will like say, like, where's my here, let me dig out my hobgoblin gladiator. So so notice how like his gladius is a 3, and he gets a +2 attack. So that gladius attack is the equivalent of 5. And so what happens then, if I decide I'm going to attack with him, I would tell the person with the battle mat, I'm attacking with my gladius, and they would just put that, and I would tell them, am I attacking the energy or the health of the creature? And so since everybody's kind of talking together and discussing, maybe there's like 2 or 3 other players that will tell me, oh, okay, well, you know, it's like I also will attack like the you know, the health, so maybe we can kill the desert harpies in 1 hit. You know, but also one of the things that I should mention, I'm going to have to mention, is because of the fact that my Skux hates the monstrous, I erased it because I put it in monstrous humanoids, and desert harpies happen to be monstrous humanoids. I did that on purpose. I get to roll a d6 to do some extra damage because I don't like them. And let's see what we get here. So I rolled a 3. Now that damage would go down here, like so. And like, because it's unblockable and it can't be defended against. And so if I had rolled, however, let's say I rolled this hex, which is a 6, then I actually, it's exploding damage, so I roll that 6, and I roll again, and I hit it again, so that'd be 12, and I'd be like 16. I'd be like, oh, this thing's dying, you know, no chances that, you know, and so then, you know, we could have other players then do defensive tactics and things like that, but we know we're going to win and we're going to defeat the harpies. However, the harpy, the combat doesn't, it's simultaneous. So what we do is we roll this d6 and we roll the hex. So group piercing help, targets who are not at full health are, you have these things, targets who are not at full health are captured. So that'd be a pretty bad thing. It's going to be like 4 damage. It's undefendable, and so everybody's going to take that 4 points of damage, but we're still going to kill the harpies. And so captured would normally be an effect that would be pretty bad and pretty detrimental to everybody, but since we already won the combat, then we would then defeat them. And so you can kind of see also there's this is a group health one. Those who suffer any damage become poisoned, which on a 4 and a 5, and you can see. And then over here, deal target energetic. This damage becomes energy drain. So then it would be an energy drain attack. And when it's and this tells you who gets targeted, and when you don't have a group attack, if you don't have something that affects everybody, you will have everybody roll a die, and then whoever rolls the highest will become the target of that particular attack when it is a singular target. And then once you're done with the combat, you just you're going to erase all of the things that are on there like so, and then you would go ahead and you would see what the group reward is. And in this case, there is this 5 gold, and so we get 5 gold, but also you can see that there's this one kind of this silver. That's actually platinum. Platinum is actually one of the ways you can win the game. One of the aspects of the winning the game is gaining 100 platinum as a group, and if you can manage to do that as a group, then you will have a big giant bonus, and win the game, so to speak. Now the game actually, if your characters die, you can come back. And it is really easy to die. If you don't have enough food, you start starving. If you starve 3 times in a row, you're dead. Since everybody's working together and going the same place, you can share food with one another, and you can share items with one another. There isn't any real preventing you from basically helping out each other, and so equaling out the food between everybody is always a good idea. And also you can give each other gold and so on and so forth to continue. Now, as I said, there's a lot to this game. I've shown you quite a bit of it. Some of this, if you played the other 2 games before this, it's you're gonna see the how this game was built on the bones of those 2 preceding games. But I barely scratched the surface. You're going to get tons of those different circumstance cards. You get tons of different caravan leaders, caravan events, mutations, power-up cards, all the stuff. And each time you play, it's going to be a big, giant, epic, awesome game that you're just going to have a blast playing each and every time that you do. So I'll talk more about all of that in my final thoughts, but every time I hear about them coming out with another HEXplore game, I can't wait to see what they've added, and this was no exception, and I'm super excited about this game. But let me talk about all that and more in my final thoughts. Alright, and now you can go ahead and take a look at these rules. You can do that whenever you like. So just know that you can dig down and you can dig into the minutia, if you will. And I say minutia in a good way. A lot of times you tell people, oh, there's all these rules to this game. It's really complex, and people are like, ooh, I don't want to. No, it is a game that after you've played a turn or 2, you'll realize this is, just kind of, and I say this with love, it is an extension to a talisman experience where move here, turn over a card, do what it says. And the thing is that you have a lot of things that you have to keep in mind. There's a lot of different aspects of the game as far as your the missions you're on, the allies that you have, the overarching how we're going to win this game, are we starving to death, tons of things like that you have to keep in mind as you play the game. So it is definitely a more complex game than something like Talisman, but ultimately that's what this game is. It is kind of keeping track of your character, leveling them up, making sure they're healthy, make sure they have cool equipment, and so on and so forth. And so you hopefully at some point you can go ahead and try to accomplish the big main goal, which a lot of times has to do with the Ravager, but it could just be as I said, getting that platinum and trying to win that route. So and so the game kind of just progresses along that path, and so don't let a big giant thick rule book intimidate you in some way. The rules, in my opinion, are very, very obvious, and by obvious I mean they just make sense, right? It's like, oh, it's like I'm in a gladiator pit, and it's like, yes, you can get hurt in a gladiator pit, but you don't exactly die. It's like you get to recover, and like the people, because they want the people not to die. They want to be people running the gladiator pit want them to be kept safe, and like otherwise the gladiators wouldn't want to fight, right? But there are gladiator pits that are dangerous that your characters can die in if you want to go down. And I didn't actually show you the gladiator pit, and I apologize for that. So, but that is a really good way for your players to experience like combats, and also like just get rewards and things like that as well. And that's also one of the things I think that's really important. HEXplore was one of those games where it's like, I never really had a really true sandbox RPG experience until like I played a game like Xia and HEXplore. And these are like, and I kind of lovingly group both of those games together in a way because of the fact that when I play them, they have this wonderfully epic and awesome way of telling a story with a lot of bare bones, but like you get to fill in the details of the narrative, right? So like that hobgoblin gladiator that I created, as he goes on, like on the adventures, and like gets lost in the desert, and like sees the Ravager like come out of the dunes behind him, and they race to get to the Caravan and then head out of the desert because they don't want to fight, or they're worried that that giant sandworm is going to eat them, and then they go back and maybe they muck around in one of those quadrants for a while and do some missions and gain a reputation, and then like that town starts to like them, and so then they can get bigger and better missions and go off and do those things, and then but now since they're friends with this town, another city-state doesn't like them, and if they go over there, the guards of that town decide to attack them, and just so there's all these interlocking things that actually start to make sense, but also and because they make sense, and because they're like a common sense rule set, the complexity doesn't increase as well, if that makes sense to you. I guess I said sense a lot in that paragraph, but I think you get what I'm saying. And the fact that the game is so freeform and open, and a lot of times say, oh, no two games will ever be the same. Well, you can say that about a lot of games, but you can't really say that a lot about a lot of narrative games. And this is one of those things where this is a narrative game. The game tells you stories, you play it, the movie plays in your head, and it is just a heck of a lot of fun. And I appreciate the fact that the game is very, very, very friendly to any number of players, because you're all working together to decide what you're going to do together. But also, like, if you wanted to just play the game solo and just say, I'm going to take these 4 heroes and I'm going to take them in there and I'm just going to play the game. I'm going to take 2 heroes and I'm going to play the game, and so forth. The game can be scaled up and down in difficulty as you like, and so that is another nice thing about it as well. And you can even combine, like, lots of the different sets together. Now, I don't, some of it might be too crazy or anything like that, but there's nothing stopping you from playing like some big giant epic long campaign with everything that you have, and I think that's one of the things that they wanted to be available to the players when you have these games. Now, I kind of enjoy them just on their own, like their own little like subset of a universe, right, of the HEXplore universe, but there's nothing stopping you from having some truly amazingly giant, huge, epic story either. And the one thing I do want to say, in my final thoughts here, in my final thoughts, is that lots of times, and I talked about this with expansions, and this isn't an expansion, so to speak, this is like an expansion material, but it stands on its own as well. There's a lot of times when they're like, okay, here's all these new rules we're going to shove into this game, and you're going to have to relearn how to play. And I don't like that. I'm not a big fan of that. And somebody's probably going to say something, because if they've watched my videos before, it's like, well, isn't that kind of what they did here with Sands of Shurax? And I would say, yeah, okay, I can see that a little bit. What you're saying with these rules for the caravans, and the rules with like the different city-states and all these other things, the giant, the giant dune worm that's in the middle, the Ravager. And okay, yeah, I mean, I can see what you're saying, and I can buy into that, but I'm just going to add a little caveat where it's like the base mechanisms of the game, move here, roll those 3 dice, try to get successes, the combat with the battle sheet, all those things, they are represented, and they have been the same with every single instance of this. And so when you just layer on 1 or 2 cool new little tidbits that once again are common sense tidbits on top of these things, I I'm of the opinion that like that is the type of change to the game that I enjoy. I don't enjoy when like they change rules to a game and I have to relearn how to play the game. But when you institute a change or changes to a game where they just kind of get stacked upon the mechanisms that I've already become familiar with and I've already learned to love, then I don't have a big problem with that, because once again, you're just kind of adding seasoning to the already amazing meal that I have in front of me. So there you go. That is HEXplore. I have to look at the Kickstarter campaign again, but I'm pretty sure you can get like an all-in. If you missed out on the first two things and you wanted to like give the guy who has this a bunch of money, I think you can get all of them all bundled together. And man, oh man, I would be envious of whoever did that, because you were going to have so much adventure. I mean, if you just wanted to play this, you could play that for the rest of the year and never play anything else, and you would have an absolute blast. So everybody says, hey, I'm looking for a true sandbox fantasy role-playing experience. Look no further. This is exactly that, and you know, I can't recommend it enough. If you have any questions about anything, please ask away. I'll be happy to answer those as best as I can. As always, thank you so much for your time and watching this video. Some of these, when I know people are watching this and they're getting excited about games that I'm excited about, it really, really warms my heart. And if it wasn't for the people out there watching this stuff, I probably would have quit a long time ago. Just remember, you are an awesome human being, and everything about you is both awesome and amazing. Send your love out into the universe. I guarantee you, the more you do that, the more love that universe is going to send right back to you. I'm the Undead Viking. As I said, you're awesome. I'll talk to you next time.